Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chop It Up Pod. My name is Elijah. This is Nelisa, and we have a special guest, one of the founders and CEO of the company, Marlene Sossaman.
Thank you, Elijah. How y'all doing? It's thanks for having me on. It's kind of funny. It feels funny, but it's cool.
Yeah. So today we have a special episode. Um, Today is actually the 60th year that Malcolm X was assassinated. So it's a
Mm,
very important and significant day to day. And we thought it would be good to come out and just talk about history and reflect on this activist.
right.
All right, so we're gonna show you a 2-minute video.
Oh well. I
Oh,
think we're gonna. Yeah, you're supposed to talk about that. Don't worry about it.
Malcolm X, Malcolm X, born Malcolm Little in 1925, spent key years in Boston, where he was exposed to Black culture, street life, and racial inequality after being imprisoned in 1946. He educated himself, joined the Nation of Islam,
Islam,
Islam.
asylum,
Islam.
is
and become Malcolm X, a revolutionary
a
leader.
revolutionary.
re-
Let Anilisa, you can take it from here. So you
Okay,
share it.
a revolutionary leader who challenged systemic racism and white supremacy. Unlike mainstream civil rights leaders, he advocated for self defense, Black nationalism, and economic independence, urging Black people to reject oppression and take control of their own destiny. His powerful speeches and radical vision inspired the Black Power movement and reshaped the fight for racial justice. Today, his legacy as a fearless revolutionary lives on, especially in Boston, where his transformation began.
That's beautiful. I love that post that y'all made with this. It really is nice. Nice. So yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the things I really like about, like sometimes when you learn about history, you really hear about people who are really working hard and they're like really fearless and brave, And sometimes, when you're dealing with injustice, you just have to be brave, right? If it's the quietness that sometimes is what the fear wants you to be. Like the fear wants you to be quiet. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So now we have a video, and even though this was 60 years ago, the issues that Malcolm addresses in this video is still prominent today in the Black community. And so we have this 2-minute YouTube video of him addressing police brutality.
In order for you and me to devise some kind of method or strategy to offset some of the events or repetition of the events that have taken place here in Los Angeles recently, we have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough. And it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we're dealing in hate. We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you? And I, for one, as a Muslim, believe that the white man is intelligent enough. If he were made to realize how black people really feel and how fed up we are without that old compromise and sweet talk. Stop sweet talking him. Tell him how you feel. Tell him what kind of hell you've been catching, and let him know that if he's not ready to clean his house up, if he's not ready to clean his house up, he shouldn't have a house. It should catch on fire and burn down.
Wow. You can see how his like legacy was so like full of fire. Like you can see how he must have been making people mad. What do you think?
I think that it was a powerful speech, and that's why people didn't like it, because it held power, it held confidence, it held what
Right,
they didn't want from the Black community during that time, and even now, which is why they despised him.
right. Do you think that like in now times, like if he said that exactly right now, do you think that like do you think like is that controversial what he's saying back then? In 2025, are those words controversial?
Well, I wouldn't say they're controversial from my perspective, but then if it was out in the media and like live in public, there would be controversy surrounding it, whether we'd like to admit that or not. Because what I think
Hmm.
about when I hear that question is I think about the recent Super Bowl with Kendrick Lamar, who was singing a song, right? Who was a performer and got so much
Right,
backlash. And if
right,
Malcolm X was to go out on a very large stage and speak his word to the people and speak that word to people, there would be some
right,
controversy surrounding it.
right. I think so. What do you think? So, what do you think, Elijah?
Um, honestly, I feel like um his words holds so much power and so much truth. Some people just choose to try to not believe it or try to not, like um how do I explain it? Like try to not choose to like believe what he's saying. Yes.
Hmm. Right, right. Well, I mean, I can see how fiery he is, So I just feel like, and the truth is, like, I feel like sometimes, like he's not allowed to be angry. Like black people are not allowed to have like real genuine fears, and he was simply just reacting to police, wounding seven of people that he knew in that mosque. And I mean, why wouldn't you want to feel like that? I mean, that's how I look at it. Like, why wouldn't you want to feel like mad that they're doing that? And all he's saying is that, that the way people are being treated, and you should speak your mind and speak your full truth. I mean, but that's how I read it. So,
Mhm.
Right.
Well,
anyway.
we have some questions for you, Mr. Solomon, as a person who is very well educated in Black history and specifically in the Black history surrounding Boston. We have some questions for you surrounding this very
Oh my!
popular, well-known
I hope
actress.
I, I hope I can. I hope I can meet up.
Okay. Well,
um,
the first question we have is, how should schools teach about Malcolm X in history classes?
Mm. Well, I mean, definitely, I think there needs to be some big changes. I mean, I think because I feel that sometimes it's more like your teachers and people that maybe not live in our communities that are teaching you, and they're sensitive to the information, but you as a young person of color or culture, you may not be so, right, you may not be so, like, it's actually like very empowering for you, and that is kind of maybe like a derivative of the fact, like I said, they didn't want him to talk, and they now don't want, not everyone obviously, but just the system doesn't want you to know that stuff either. They don't even teach about the desegregation of Boston public schools in Boston public schools. Let's just, if you want to keep it real, we can how we do it. But that's how. So I think that they should be teaching it more accurately. I don't think any footage like the ones I showed you after 60 years, or in fact over 60 years, because that was before he passed away. Obviously, he passed away 60 years today. So over 60 years, I don't think any footage from there should be anything. And in fact, I think it tells more about the community we live in if what he said over 60 years ago is still resonating and still not being solved today.
Well, I have a follow-up question
Yes.
with that, and it is, what steps do you think at like an administrative level needs to
Mm,
be taken in order for that to happen, for the history to be taught properly in
right,
public schools in Boston about Malcolm X?
right. I mean, there are many ways people can go about it based on their budget, but they could sponsor affinity programs, where, like our group, right? They could work with our group, and like we could, like, we want to do work with Layla, we want to do work with other people. So there's ways of doing that. Um, they could be, obviously there's books and curriculum that are already out there that they can just like add to the curriculum, right? They can convert some. So like, let's say you're doing like an English, or you're trying to do like some kind of like writing, writing exercise. You could add the subjects of those writing exercises to be about, Black history, tours, you know it's an investment. It's not just even one class. It's about like the narratives and learning it. They need to, of course, hire more locally based teachers that know about like specifically like Boston history, and there are a lot out there actually. you know um, yeah, I mean, I think those are some of the steps that people can take if they're really interested. I mean, it's out there. I just feel like we're learning too much history from like social media, and not saying that is wrong or is bad. It's just that there needs to be like some system and some curriculum around it. So like there are tests and like normal school stuff, right? Like not just you saw it on social media. We don't really know if it's actually, you know, we don't even know if it's real. Like I mean, we most of it is real, right? They're showing videos and like real things. Like, how could you fake that? But for the most part, there isn't much like that. So we should be having this in our schools, and we're going to advocate for it.
All right, I think this is a perfect point to move on to our next question.
oh, do you agree with Malcolm X profusely?
Philosophy.
Philosophy.
A philosophy of self-defense and Black empowerment. Why or why not?
Mm. I must say that I have to agree with anyone that says that we should defend yourself, because I don't know, defense is actually like supposed to be a good thing. Like everybody should be expected to defend themselves. That's what I think. Like even the American Second Amendment is about self defense, right? So I think that that is just. I think that and the black empowerment. I think why shouldn't want everybody want to have thriving, empowered communities, especially if they've been problems that have been in our communities for decades now. Like why shouldn't you want that to happen? So at some point we have to realize, like, is it like Neelisa said earlier, like, is it allowed now? Right? Like, is even allowed now? Like, because we're acting like it's 60. But are these questions I'm asking, are they allowed as communities now? And if we don't, like, defend ourselves, because this is not happening because of a lack of effort. This is happening because of people are maintaining structures that are maintaining like what was actually happening all the way back to when Malcolm X was alive. So that's kind of why it still exists, right? It's not like it got better and then went back worse. It actually it actually just stayed, didn't improve much over all that time. And that means that there's something keeping that from happening, because I know we're working hard. I know we're trying to teach our children the right thing. I know we're, going to school and, taking people to church and, like just the same, like, I mean, you know, uh, well meaning, and it just seems that like the whole struggle is just dehumanized to a point where you expect to defend yourself as a human being. And I think those are powerful. So I think that I'm definitely for it. And I definitely think that making sure that young people understand it, because you guys are the ones that, are the future. And we need you to understand like who you are, where did your ancestors leave off, so y'all can be like, oh, you know what? This worked. Remember how I say you got to do old things so it's like your ancestors solve problems, the same problems y'all have. The same problems y'all have, your ancestor had them. Whether it's maybe, you know, looking good one day, or, trying to get some money, trying to figure out what you need to do at this point in life. How do you get your education? And all the same problems existed in 1962 that they exist today, you know. But now that, but we need their like new tools of today that you all have. Like there was no ability for people, that look like us to like be able to broadcast and have things widely available. Like, but are you still struggling with the same problems, police brutality? Are you still struggling? You see, that are happening in our things that are happening in our community. So, what new ways? How do y'all get funky with it? How do y'all put your own label on it, right? That to me is the reason why it's important to, you know, to agree with this black empowerment. Because if we don't empower ourselves as adults, then y'all are not going to be as empowered. Y'all should always increase in the empowerment every generation. So I think that's why. Yeah.
Okay. Well, why do you think that a majority, not a majority, but a decent amount of people believe that his philosophy of self defense is violent or sort of
Yeah.
almost dangerous?
Right. Right. Well, I mean, I think because he was unapologetic resistance. I don't think that any human being that really, I mean, he said it in that piece we watched, that human rights were being violated. Like, there's nothing more to be said after that, right? That if you're violating human rights, those are what they call crimes against humanity. Those are not allowed by like international law, not even about local law. And so if he's saying that, and if any kind of framing or narratives put around him that say that what he's saying is bad, I mean, what do you mean? So people should be happy not being defenseless against police and dogs? Is that the narrative that we're supposed to say that's a good behavior? You know, why are we not talking about the people who are training dogs to attack black people? You know,
Uh,
so yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
well, I was thinking about how anger, like black anger, is often a
Mm,
synonym for violence, and it's the same thing here where self-defense is a synonym for violence. But
right,
in the context of the situation, it just doesn't make sense. Is it really violence or is it an understandable sort of reaction? Um, because
right,
I think it's understandable both ways how Malcolm X and MLK went about civil rights and, you know, just trying to
right,
get rights for African Americans. You can be peaceful, quote unquote peaceful, or you can have a more active and radical approach because at the end of the
right,
day, it's just fighting for human rights and attaining those rights by any means necessary.
right, right. No, I mean, I agree with you. I feel that um, his too. I think it just goes to how like the narrative and the actions don't have to line up. I like my philosophy actually joins both of them. I believe that we should fight for freedom by any peaceful means necessary. And what that, I think that phrase kind of like makes it so that you know that it's a war. People are trying to, pull you down. They don't want you to succeed. And at the same time, you have to be peaceful. Sometimes I don't want to ever not validate the genuine anger when your kids and your family and friends are being brutalized. Like, we have to make sure that we speak energy, positive, constructive energy into those experiences because, like, if we don't, we're actually dehumanizing them in a way. Like, we're not discussing, we're not, like, we're just kind of trivializing that people were getting, like, who wants to get hit sick by a dog? Like, think about, like, imagine, right? And that's not even the worst of it, right? That's like, but why? Because you want to be treated like a human being. So I think the anger, I mean, anger is not as constructive, obviously, but people need to vent for their social, emotional well being, right? People need to, it's traumatic. You can't expect people who are undergoing deliberate trauma to not have any sort of reaction and PTSD and like all these things, and we must speak it into existence because even in the school system there's data that shows how African American young people are in this in punished more, expelled more, right? And so there is this, it does, that attitude does seep around, and come out in different forms. So, um, yeah, so I mean, that's how I see at least you know, how he's being framed. I think, like I said, not everybody should be expected to be as peaceful as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, you know, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So you actually sort of answered our next question,
Yeah, that's true.
which was how do you compare Malcolm X's approach to civil rights
Mm.
with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Right. Well, since I talked about a little bit of the Malcolm side, I'll talk a little bit about how the narrative on the Martin, like, so even though Malcolm X was considered to be more violent and the Nation of Islam as a separatist, these are propaganda. But one of the brilliant things about the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was he he actually like in reality caused actual more violence by going across like the bridge in Selma where he knew the police were there, the dogs were there, the hoses were there, and he filmed he made sure that those things were filmed, and he made sure those things were filmed so that um the images of the hatred and the violence that he instigated, because if they had stayed in front of the on and not crossed the bridge, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, then he would have obviously, like there would have been no violence. So that's one of the ironic things that he went there. He was peaceful protest. They did not sling anything. They kind of like made themselves out to be like sacrificial lambs, sacrificing and risking because it was dangerous. Like you could die. It wasn't like just people sometimes think the civil rights movement like was inevitable. Anyway, it's not true. People did not know that they were going to change basically hundreds of years of law, because while there was no slavery, it wasn't like a whole bunch of steps up from slavery, you know. So, it is what it is. And I think one of the lessons now, and that's why I have that motto where I said, by any peaceful means necessary, because we want to kind of learn from both of them, right? We want to be okay to be angry. All right, it's okay to be a black person and speak your mind. It's okay to think you're beautiful. It's okay to fight for human rights of and all these different, ideologies. It's okay to not, but you have to control the narrative a little bit. You can't let people dictate what you are because they made a relatively peaceful man but fiery speaker into the bad guy because maybe they were afraid of maybe the word got out, of what he was saying. Maybe he could get people to get riled up, and then the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, he now was the peaceful one, but he was actually causing. Causing a lot of violence to happen because they wouldn't take no for answer and they do peaceful protest and, sit in at the counters and boycotts and, you know, so there are lessons to be learned, both of them. Okay.
Yes. Well, me personally, when I think about Malcolm X and MLK, I really think about opposites. Like, I don't know why. It's just how
Mhm.
it's been made out to be in my head. Like, oh, Malcolm X is like self defense, any means necessary. MLK is like peace first, guys. We have to stay peaceful first, think about our actions and, try to get our rights in a peaceful manner. And Malcolm X is like,
Right.
we need to get our rights no matter what. We need to defend ourselves no matter what. And so
Right.
I wouldn't call them opposites though, because at the core, they're fighting for the same thing, just in
That's
different
right.
places.
That's right.
So they're not, they're different in approach, but the goal
Is this
really, the main goal, the core goal is the same.
right? You're 100% right. I couldn't say it any better. Um, you know, myself. You want to know another thing? Think about the Black Panther Party.
Hmm.
Okay, for self defense. Okay, and the Black Panther Party is also right considered to be like a militant group. It was legal to have guns in California as soon as they started carrying guns and they made it illegal. Like, no, 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 we don't want that. You know, they are the first people, the first group to have free school lunches. So what you see now is free school lunches. That's something that they did. Like they would like go to like like different pantries, buy stuff for cheap, and try to get it back into their community. They were literally some of the, and they kind of like used a paramilitary kind of like ideology, right? So that they could get young people to like be in service. And to be honest, I'm half Nigerian. We have civil defense forces in Nigeria, like, and the civil defense is like a civilian defense force that does things like clean up, does neighborhood watches. You get what I'm saying? Like they're not carrying guns or anything like that, but they're given real responsibilities, in the community, and like kind of like a sorority, but tied to, or a fraternity, but tied to actual like things in your community. Like, so if you ever saw, let's say, the banks of the Ponset River, right? If you ever saw it dirty, you would know that the Civil Defense Force didn't do it because that was somewhere you took care of.
Mm.
You see what I'm saying? Like they would know, oh man, something's going on because the Civil Defense Force. So that's sort of what it is, and that's a human thing. Like I said, that happened in Africa. So to have these natural, you see, this is the issue, is that these are natural human emotions, very validated, very they're in truth, right? They're in, they're deep in truth, and sincerity and bravery and courage. So these are all virtues, and to
Yeah.
have common virtues that any self-respecting human being should have under those circumstances should be somehow at any sort of way diminished is racism in itself. You should not even be attacking anything that comes under that concept, even if it is angry. To be real, I mean, what you? Oh man, my kids are getting dog sick on them. Yay! Nobody would say that. So I think validation of black feelings.
Mm.
That is, I think that may be a core concept for us to talk about. In one of our classes, because you have to be, these are valid. I think that's where the trauma starts to happen, when you have genuine, validated, in reality, stress and trauma responses to negativity and subjugation and real terror and fear, and then those feelings are not validated. That is the very core of what race is, and those like feelings of, man, I mean, this is not good. No, it's good. And why are you not accepting it as good? You just want to do this, and it's like they twist, everything's twisted around, and then then you're confused, and you can't solve problems because you don't have them properly defined. It goes on and on, but yeah.
Yeah. And I was just thinking of a question. It was, where is the line between, okay, a radical group
Mhm.
and an extremist group, like a very extremist group?
Mhm. Technically, it would be when, I would say technically it would be when the there's beginning to be harm caused to the community, right?
Hmm.
By the actions of the group. That's how I would define it. So it doesn't have to do with what you're saying or how you're saying it or whatever like that. It is more to do about, are you harming the environment? Are you hurting people? Are you infringing on people's happiness? Those kind of things. So that's why I said we can look at the Black Panther Party, right? That was giving away free school lunches, right?
Hmm.
Right? Or you can talk about the Nation of Islam that promoted African American communities to be self reliant and to be proud of itself, not to bleach the skin like he was saying, like deal with some of the socio emotional trauma that comes from being racist, because people act like it's just, oh, not a job. It's more than just not getting a job. It's like not being validated as a human being, being treated less than a human being in subhuman terms, where where you have signs that say you should use this. It's very, very, the psychological damage that was done to African Americans is these are the scars that we don't see, but yet again, that doesn't make them any less painful.
Right. It's time for the next question.
Okay.
What do you think was Malcolm X's most significant combustion com,
Contribution.
com, contribution to the civil rights movement?
Mm, that's a good one. I think in of course people remember um, his fiery side. I think if you study the history of Malcolm X, it was after he went to Mecca and was immersed in a whole nother environment where Muslims of all races, creeds, sizes, and shapes and fashions were in unity together. And I would imagine it was the first time that he had immersed himself, not just in his religion, but just in other races, and be treated in such regard, right? Like it might have been the first time he had been treated nice by a white person. That says more about the white people in America than it says about white people in general, too, you know? So, I think his major contribution to me, of course, like he did all that fiery stuff, you know, and he, overcame mad odds to come from being in jail and, running around the streets of Boston. Um, but when he came back, he was a man of peace. He, he was actually like looking at it from a more international point of view, which is why it's important for us as you know, people of culture to go and experience other communities, other areas, in the world, get international. I know my man Elijah's from Dominican Republic. Hey, go to Dominican Republic and hang out. Go check out some different food. Go check out a different being. Go see how people existing amongst themselves. No place is perfect, but you know, getting and being immersed in an area for an extended period of time. Go to Jamaica, go to Africa, just go to other places in the world where Brazil, you know, and that can, awaken, we can, stay woke. I said, we can start de objectifying ourselves, because all these words have, when you heard that you're an object. There's a lot of powerful affirmations when you just see another group of people that have not had to deal with such painful experiences, you know. And so I think that's his made to me. I think that's something that I think one of the major contributions he gave, and maybe it's not highlighted enough. But that's why we need to have this Black history in our communities, because there are many stories that people can lift from, and interpretations that people can lift from his story, right? And you can see maybe a piece of yourself, maybe not in everything, but in some parts of him. But if we don't know the history, if we don't have these discussions, if we don't record it, if we don't like share it on YouTube, we're gonna do our clips and all that from this, you know, if we don't share this, how will people know? And how will people know? Oh yeah, that reminds me. I can see that, right? So we can't just keep quiet. We got to keep talking. So
That's
Mhm.
right.
I think I think that one of his most significant contributions has to be his fiery spirit. It had to be that attitude that he had towards the movement and the sort of mentality he had about the movement as well, and the situation in general. It was it was him speaking not only his mind but voicing the anger of many black voices that couldn't voice their anger.
mm,
And I think
mm,
that's something he sort of showed the black community that you can voice your anger, you can
right,
be brave, and even though you're in this battle and you're fighting for your rights, you can say what you have to say and not sugarcoat it in a way and not try to act peaceful. You can express your anger and the emotion this invokes. Yeah, so.
right. And especially now, 60 years later, if you couldn't do it back then, let's hope that you young people can do it now. I mean, please, you know what I'm saying? Like, and if we can't, then we need to push harder. Like I said, by any peaceful means necessary. We gotta show up at our community events. We've got to organize community events. We've got to get people. Hey, watch this clip. We gotta fight. Because trust me, they're not. Those things are not showing up in your social media feeds. You know, we gotta get. We gotta people. Watching our social media feeds, learning about history, talking more, being more proactive. Because if y'all can't say it now, then I mean, we need to. Then we need another civil rights movement. Then you know, because by now it's supposed to be already done. Like it's like how many? We waiting another 100 years? Like when are we? Okay, I'm reloaded. It's like it's time to
I
go.
I
You
don't
know?
know. I feel like, oh my gosh, how do I say this? Basically, there's hundreds of years worth of oppression. Nah. There's hundreds of years of oppression we have to like not like undo, yeah,
Yeah.
undo. But and
Right.
there's like systems that were specifically created on the like base of that oppression, and a lot of people
Right.
are denying that those systems are based or heavily based in oppression. And
Right.
as long as people have that mentality, we're gonna keep on fighting, and that might not
Right.
really fully resolve now. So.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's why, I've been talking about the woke,
Mhm.
right? And the woke, I mean, we're not going to go into too much of it now, but basically, woke is like a sacred kind of like, it means something very serious in African American community, where it means like awakening and being a full human being with the full range of emotions. You know what I'm saying? Like healthy, free of the trauma, right? All these things that you're talking about. And that's what woke really represents. So if anybody says it different, please try and advise them not to say it, because we need to elevate that word so people will talk about it, and just in talking about it there will be more people that will awaken, if that makes any sense. Like if we don't talk about the process of de-objectifying ourselves by seeing ourselves as human, that we are allowed to have full range of emotions, from anger, sad, we want to defend ourselves, we want to be strong, whatever those range of emotions are, right? It doesn't have to be anything death defying. It's simply, I want my daughter, I want to have pride in my with my wife and take her out to a restaurant without going through the back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? These are basic. Like, come on. Like, I want to take my children out for something to eat, and I don't want to be embarrassed. They call names. Like, these are not major asks. Like, these are not big asks. These are very light asks. You know. And but then I think it's important to have those conversations because, in the end of the day, they just okay. So now we can do those things, but there are now other things that we need to continue the conversation
Mm-hmm.
on. Because the layers. Okay, so now you took off the lowest hanging fruit. Thank you very much. We appreciate y'all. Can we step it up just a little bit faster, a little bit quicker? Can we keep on? And that's where you guys, because they're gonna, that's where you guys come in, as young people. But as I told y'all, it takes practice, which is kind of what Chop It Up is about. You have to practice being assertive, being able to communicate, being able to communicate in ways that are healthy and constructive, and not give in to anger, and still be serious. I mean, sharp as a tack, not giving up anything for your community while you're advocating for everything for your community, and not, it doesn't have to be threatening. It doesn't have to be, that's what I mean by any peaceful means necessary. It doesn't have to be threatening. It can be strategic. It can be deliberate. And it also can be
Mm-hmm.
angry when it is rightfully so and respectfully done to be angry. Of course, you have the full range of emotions. You're a human being. And I think those are the kind of messages um, that I think that, he really brings to the table. So, you know,
Yes.
how we doing? Okay, we're doing good. We're doing good. We're doing
Yes.
good.
And so this is our next question for you, Mr. Solomon. What do you think?
I think that's the last one. That might be the last
All
one I
right, so
do.
this
All
is
right.
our last question for you, Mr. Solomon. What do you think about
All right.
Malcolm X's stance on integration versus separation?
You guys come with the
Mm,
big ones, huh?
mm.
Who thought of this question? Y'all better watch out and be looking at who thought of this question. I'm gonna have to do some investigations within the school. All right, so what do I think about Malcolm X stance on integration versus separation? Hmm. Well, I think the most important thing is the context. And I think when people think of integration, they have a view of it that I do not think is necessarily the it's not necessarily healthy given where African Americans are from the crimes against humanity that have been perpetrated on them for a very long time. So imagine if like you had just got, you know, like you have a little sister or something and they really just got hurt, right? Maybe they fell down the stairs, jumping on the mattress and bumped their head, right? There's so many different things our little brothers and sisters are doing. And after that pain, you now like get, harsh or you're not sympathetic, you know, and you're like, okay, get back on there. Let's move. Let's hurry up. Let's go back. Sometimes you have to give people space to like adjust and to, like we have to acknowledge how traumatizing this was. And this goes to recognition of feelings and what kind of repair work needs to be done in our communities to think of, I mean, like, we are thinking with trauma. That is
Mm.
not healthy. Like that's simply not healthy. There's no other way. And if you're not addressing it, if you're not thinking about it, if you're not talking about it, if you're not getting services for it, then you're going to have um, less healthy outcomes. Stress, uh, you know, you're not going to learn as much. People who are stressed do not learn as much. People who are stressed have eating disorders at times. People who are stressed, there are multiple, there are multiple reactions, and when it's affirmed as normal, then people may be sick and not even realize they're sick, which means they won't go get the help that they need. They will only perpetuate the pain that they're on their children and maybe through abusive relationships, you know. And so there's a lot of, like tentacles that come from this trauma and thinking with drug use,
Mm.
violence. There's a lot of things that come from trauma. So going back to the question of integration versus separation, then is the separation really about like getting your own affairs in order, keeping quiet, letting the young child on the that just bumped his head take some time to sit down and relax a bit, take a deep breath, you know? Is that not like important to, or because integration, when you're integrating with the people that are actually doing the harm and then they're not admitting to it, they're not like being humble or sorry or trying to make things better. In fact, I know the great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said that expecting African Americans to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, when they're bootless, is a cruel jest. You know, when they weren't giving an economic base to you know build on.
Mm.
Being what he has another saying, being subject to the rains and winds of heaven, like just out there, bro. Just out there, so you know I don't mind I don't think that under the context using the word separation as separationist is once again invalidating the natural desire to look at oneself as a human group and try to pick yourself up. I mean, he was talking about emotional stuff in that video we watched. He wasn't talking about winning and like tearing down the government. And I mean, he wasn't talking. He was talking about bleaching and like self for affirmations, like a big like psychological coach.
Um,
Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
So I can't. I kind of disagree with what you said at the end that he didn't talk about like the government stuff because at the end of the video he was like, if your house isn't clean, then you don't deserve the house. You got to burn down the house. Which
Yes, yes, but yes, I get that. But he said that the house has got to burn.
mhm.
And yes, it's a reference to violence in a way, but it is also a perspective of psychological warfare. It's also, valid feelings. I mean, if it is valid that if something is hurting you, that thing should burn.
Yeah, but I'm trying to say like, can't that be interpreted as him
It can
saying
be. It
we need
can be.
to we
Yes.
need to like reconstruct or yeah, reconstruct the government, or tear
Right.
down this
Yeah.
old system and create a new one.
Yes, it can be, but for those, that's like I said, the narrative with that is that you have to assume that the people should not want to defend themselves from dogs and police
Mm.
violence. That's where I'm coming at. Like it's just about narratives. Narratives are the most important thing. The reason why narratives are important is because you can't win an argument if you're using the wrong narrative. There's nothing you can say about the narrative. So if the narrative is just that he's a separatist, but you're not putting in context the fact that he people who are, denying him every right, violating his human rights, murders and all sorts of other atrocities being committed, and he doesn't even have the right to say, you know what, y'all,
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that, I don't really necessarily think that's what he really wanted, but it's like, you're hurting us. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, you want me to sit here and be like, oh, here, pain, I want to hug you, pain, here, pain. Like, here, agony, here, death. No, I don't want that. I mean, who wants that? These are simple concepts. So that's what I'm saying. The narrative is changed on him in order to not validate and dehumanize. So when you don't give him that proper understanding, this is 2025. If we can't call those things in 62 years
Mm.
ago to be violations, and he didn't have a right to say those things, then we really haven't gone far at all, right? And I think the integration I envision that everybody wanted is, if I want a job, if I want to go to a public park, if I want to go to, these are the movies. We're not talking about big heavy asks. Those things should be integrated. Now, in my community, I should be kept whole. I should be allowed to deal with our harms. We should be allowed to grow and feel who we are and grow in community. That's what I feel. Like the Negro Leagues was this baseball league that was in all these African American communities, right? And they would play against each other, baseball, just baseball, and they would have fun, and like they would, like, little businesses. They would be selling hot dogs at the games, creating business. These are good internal things. And when it was integrated with the major leagues, now the actual African American community lost a source of income,
Mm.
which is self-reliance and goes to where he's talking about. So I don't think, the separation and how it's being framed is not accurate. It's he just wanted us to build up lick our wounds and heal and grow from that point of view. And he saw a system that wanted to integrate them so they would never have a chance to go through that healing process, right? To awaken, to become woke, right? To de-objectify, to love ourselves, to love our skin. Like he said, to love what God gave you. Like that should be like basic human rights, to love what you as a person of any faith believes that are given to you by higher powers. That is a cultural right that every human being bears. So, like I said, so if we have to frame the narrative
Right.
correct, from that point of view, that it's not that he was trying to be a separate person, but the things that they were asking him to integrate with were actually harmful to him and his community.
Right.
Okay.
Further, oh, you have anything to say now, Lisa?
Oh yeah, I just had a quick question. So for integration, do you think because we went with a more peaceful route to civil rights, to getting our civil rights or human rights, really, do you think integration is a result of that method? Because in like when in a separate sort of society, Black Wall Street, that's like when the Black
Hmm.
community was thriving and stuff, and they
Yeah.
burned that down because they saw that um thriving community as a threat, even though they were
Right.
separate. Do you think that's why we went down the path of integration? Because we went a peaceful route, and to them, being separate, if we were separate, but we were actually thriving,
Mhm.
it would still be a threat to them. A threat.
Right. No, well, that's a fantastic question, and I'm glad you did mention Black Wall Street, because people always point to the 1921 destruction of the community, right? But people don't know that Black Wall Street was actually rebuilt. And it was rebuilt, and then it got destroyed by the urban renewal and redlining around this time of the Civil Rights Act. And that is a history that is often very overlooked, because people don't realize that by the time people got a chance to vote, these communities that were like Black Wall Streets in Boston, like where Madison Park, where Elijah goes to school, Madison Park Technical Vocational School. That was the field of that community was the field of the Madison Park was a community, was a Black Wall Street of Boston, and there was like businesses up and down Tremont, going back all the way to like where Wally's and Slade's and all that is. Those were all business. That was a business economic. There was dentists and all sorts of businesses there. And so when these communities, they think about integration, that made it so that is that we never actually got to integrate because they didn't allow us to stay by ourselves because the communities were leveled with highway projects and city expansions, just like the Greenwood area in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was Black Wall Street. They built it up and it got destroyed again. So the reason we have to make sure that we put that the second destruction of our communities. That's why, to me, the integration and everything didn't work as well, is because the very communities that were the sources of these institutions were destroyed, and like public housing, and that's when the crack epidemic and stuff start coming, like 10 years or so later. So the the thriving community is has been a threat, and it was attacked, like you said. And without that thriving community, it's just hard for our communities to prosper, to thrive, culture to thrive, to have that culture to thrive. So I think that is, that's why we have our school and our, Afro-American Academy. That's why we have the Chop It Up podcast, because, and, our motto is culture to thrive, is because we are trying to develop, and get this information out there so people would ask questions about, the technical vocational school, Vernon Street. Vernon Street is literally like, when we come out the back, like where we pick up, like, where we come into the building for like the summer program,
Hmm.
like, under that ramp and stuff.
Yeah.
That's Vernon Street. That's Vernon Street in the back. You know, this year, Afro American Academy, we're going to be really doing a lot of work around, Vernon Street, and like we're really going to be doing a lot of for summer projects. So you guys can know, like, okay, we want a community like that. That sounds good. Like a place where like a lot of like young artists hang out. Like there used to be places like that in Boston, like young artists, all kinds of artists from all over, from the South, from, musicians, you know, all kinds of artists used to be, around that. Like there was a SoWa area, south of Washington area. There was, like I said, Tremont Street, was like the main strip,
Right.
and going down Mass Ave. So culture and like that you're not being able to partake in. We had our own parades. We had like cadet parades in Boston down these streets. Like imagine all these cadets, and they have their brass bands. You know, they used to have them going down Hammond Street and all around the community. These are things. Camp, some Breezy Meadows Camp. This was like a historic camp. Elma, then of course there's Emma Lewis, and her arts, and there was all sorts. So removal of this community. Um, I mean, you guys. I mean, we have to be on these kind of platforms to try and keep those names and history alive.
Right. So further ado, thank you so much, Mrs. Solzman, for coming to our Chop It Up podcast.
Yeah. Thank
Well,
Um,
you.
so thank you for watching the Chop It Up pod. We where we keep it real. Follow us on our IG, and our YouTube at the chop it up dot com. I mean dot chop it up pod. Thank you for coming.
Yes. Thank you for watching, guys.